Hey, today people love to binge watch TV series, don't they? Like Yellowstone. And these TV series will normally have a big epic battle, or a war, and there's lots of history in them, just like the Bible. When you read stories of the Bible, I'm amazed at the amount of bloodshed. God does not play around. He's gracious, he's merciful, and he's slow to anger. But when he's done everything that he can for us and we still oppose him, he doesn't play. Look at the city of Amalek, which you may not have ever heard of them, but they opposed Israel when Israel was coming out of Egypt. That was a horrible decision. But God told Saul to go into that city and kill everything. All right? Even the livestock. He doesn't play. You can look at the book of Samuel, and it goes through and talks about all the epic battles that David won. He never lost. That makes me think of the promise that God made to Abraham, right? There's another awesome story. Abraham took his only son, Isaac, up on a mountain to sacrifice him because God told him to. Can you imagine? And then God looked on Abraham and he saw that Abraham feared him. And he said, "Ooh, I am surely going to bless you." You see, God was pleased with that. And he said that your descendants are going to be beyond number. And they're going to conquer the cities of their enemies. All of them. And through your descendants, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed. Is that a promise or is that a promise? And you know what? David is a descendant of Abraham. Doesn't that explain all of his victories? And you know what? Abraham isn't the only person in the Bible that received a blessing like that from God. Moses did. Joshua did. And guess what? So did David. In Samuel 7, it paints a picture of David in his palace. And he's looking out the window. And he says, "Boy, look at me. Here I am in this beautiful cedar palace. And out there is the Ark of God in a tent." I remember when God looked down on Abraham and saw that he feared him, and he said, "Ooh, I'm going to bless you." I believe that this is one of those moments where God looked on to David and said, "Ooh, there's my humble servant, and I'm going to bless him." Later on that night, God spoke to Nathan, right, who's a prophet. And he said, "You go and tell my servant David that I've been with him since he was a shepherd. I brought him from a shepherd to the commander of my people, Israel. And I slayed all of his enemies right before his eyes. He saw every single one of them. I am going to bless it. I'm going to make his name more famous than anyone who's ever lived. And one of his offspring is going to build the temple for my name." Now, that was a huge privilege, all right? And that ended up being Solomon. Later on in the chapter, we find David, he's alone, and he's praying, he's saying, "Oh, sovereign God, what is it about my family and I that you've brought me so far?" This is an awesome picture of a faithful, humble servant. And there's all kinds of stories in the Bible that teach us how to be a humble servant. If your power goes out and you're unable to watch that TV series, why don't you open up the book of Chronicles or Samuel or Joshua and read about the epic battles in the Bible? Where do we think the directors from these TV series get their ideas from? And there's a lot of other awesome stories in the Bible, like in Exodus. Here's the story of how Moses freed his people.
flags will descend. Just free the people, free the people. Hebrew God requests you, free the people, free the people now.
No one will leave here until I have said so. Long live the king!
Western for gold and as for the silver, 400 years they've kept you a prisoner, but you are free today. Walk through the desert but run through the Red Sea. Pharaoh's armies approaching you quickly. They all will die today. A man's destiny meant he freed the people, free the people today.